Good evening and welcome to our Skin Better Science webinar. My name is Roxanne Chabot from RBC Consultants. This evening, we're going to talk about beyond hydration, the science of hyaluronic acid, skin volumization, and regenerative topical innovation. Our speaker this evening is Dr. Chino Bay, who's a board-certified dermatologist, founder and owner, and medical director of Chino Bay Cosmetic Dermatology and Laser Institute in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We'd also like to thank our supporter, Skin Better Science, for making this educational event possible. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping tips. If you're having issues hearing the webinar, you can listen to the presentation using your telephone. Just select settings and then the phone call in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed. If you're having technical issues, please submit your questions using the question chat pane on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will help you out. At the end of this webinar, a survey will pop up in your browser and will also be sent to you 1 to 2 days later. We greatly appreciate it if you could fill it in and send it back to us. And also, within 1 to 2 days of the webinar, a certificate of attendance will be sent to you. Again, if you have any questions to ask Dr. Bay after the presentation, please submit your question using the question pane on the top right-hand side of your screen. And now, without further ado, I will pass the floor virtually to Dr. Chino Bay.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time at the end of your day to show up to this very informational lecture about beyond hydration, the science of hyaluronic acid, skin volumization, and regenerative topical innovation. So I'll be talking about a product that is the new kid on the block of the Skin Better science. Skin Better has been, in my practice, the #1 clinical skincare product that exists in my clinic, surpassing all the other ones. And it has to do because it definitely delivers what it promised and is backed a lot by science. They spend a lot of money in research and making sure that they have studies behind any claim that their product may have. And that resonates with me. So today I'm going to be talking about this new product called Ampra. It's a volumizing micro HA serum, which is very distinct, and you'll be very surprised about the science behind this product. Nothing else in the market it can claim to be identical to this or have the capabilities that this unique formulation has. So before we go into what the product is all about, let's talk about a little about hyaluronic acid. I used to give a lecture for a skin circle for a product called HA Intensifier. It was very unique, very close to my heart because it had a lot of science, and I spent a lot of time lecturing about it when it got launched. And one thing that I would ask at the beginning of this lecture, and I will do the same if I was live with you guys, I will look at the crowd and I will pick people randomly and say, when you hear HA, tell me what comes to mind. And most people would say volume. Some people would say the name of a brand filler. Some people would say hydration. Some people would say structural support. And those things are all true. But hyaluronic acid is much more than that. It really have multiple different jobs that this amazing product does in the human body. In fact, without hyaluronic acid, endogenous hyaluronic acid, there will not be cell migration and division and mitosis, any of this. There will not be possible life in any mammal if we did not have hyaluronic acid in the body. The problem with hyaluronic acid, and let's get this out of the way, is that when most people talk about hyaluronic acid, and this is the biggest mistake, everybody talk of is HA is a single molecule, and it is wrong. It is a change of polymers with one backbone that keeps them all, But according to their size and shape, they speak differently and trigger different behavior, cellular behaviors. So if they're very, very large molecules, that is how it exists in endogenous hyaluronic acid, it speaks different to the language when it touches the receptor. And if it's very, very small, it will do also almost the opposite that what the large molecules do. So in the epidermis, it have different functions, and in the dermis does too. In the epidermis will act as a humectant for water retention, and it will give volume of the stratum corneum. High molecular weight and low molecular weight in the epidermal extracellular matrix can have different jobs that it does. It can be water-bound, maintain structural integrity. It also provides elasticity and volume of the epidermis, and also influence the keratinocyte behavior like proliferation. And also when it binds to the CD44 receptor, it can do different things. In the epidermis, this binding will lead to lipid barrier establishment because it will create the proteins that will cause the lipid barrier establishment to form. And the dermis, again, it can provide water hydration to the epidermis. It serves as a scaffold to the fibroblasts. In fact, there's really neat videos of fibroblasts almost climbing, like you will see a human being climbing a palm tree to get coconuts. The fibroblasts, they move through the dermis. They communicate through that. They get messages through the extracellular matrix. So the extracellular matrix is so important, especially in the dermis where these cells reside. It provides not only structural support and the flexibility and the lubrication that it needs, but it really provides the optimal environment for fibroblast proliferation, differentiation that leads to proper formation of collagen, elastic fibers, and also glycoproteins of other types in the family of hyaluronic acid. Now, endogenous hyaluronic acid, like I mentioned before, they share a backbone, but it's not one molecule. It is not. It's a large molecule with different polymers attached to it, and all of them will have a different mechanism of action when it attaches to a receptor in a cell. So, two ways to see it. It is a structural molecule. It gives the structural support to the extracellular matrix in the dermis, but it's also a signaling molecule. A signal molecule, and you could see here the difference. If you are a hyaluronic acid molecule that is about 10 kilodalton or less, it works as a pro-angiogenic, pro-inflammatory, a highly immunostimulatory, and cell proliferation stimulatory. So it is pro-inflammation. So a small molecular weight hyaluronic acid is an inflammatory version of the same molecule. And if you go back all the way down to the high molecular weight, you see that its role is different. It's anti-inflammatory, it's anti-angiogenic, and it's immunosuppressive. So this hyaluronic acid is kind of like elixir of life. It's a viscoelastic tissue that continues synthesis and degradation. The half-life is about 12 hours for endogenous hyaluronic acid, but it definitely creates the proper environment for cells to thrive and do what they're supposed to do correctly. In fact, it's so important for the extracellular matrix that studies have been done when they get an old fibroblast and they put it in a young extracellular matrix with an optimal amount of hyaluronic acid, and the old fibroblast gets young again. When they do the opposite, when they get a young fibroblast and they put it in an extracellular matrix that the endogenous hyaluronic acid is not up to par and the place looks dilapidated, the young fibroblast gets old. So what does this tell us? It tells us that our cells never lose the capability to rejuvenate and restore themselves. What it is lost is the signals, and if there's no proper hyaluronic acid in the extracellular matrix, it will affect the signaling that happens in the dermis for the overall health of the dermis, because it affects the behaviors of the cells. So unfortunately, we always hear this, but just as it pertains to collagen, everybody heard that we lose 1 to 2% hyaluronic acid of collagen after age 20, and by the time you're 40, you lose 20 to 25%. That's the backstory. The real story is that what really happened is that we have a decline of hyaluronic acid, and this decline of hyaluronic acid affects the production of collagen and elastin. As you can see here, that in skin that is aging, dermal hyaluronic acid concentration will decrease by nearly 50% between the age of 20 and 60, contributing to the progressive flattening of the dermal epidermal junction, reduce elasticity, but also affects the signaling that makes fibroblasts to thrive and work properly. So the decline of hyaluronic acid means the decline of all the other molecules that we have in the dermis on the skin, like collagen and elastin. So what happens clinically? The visible effects of decline of hyaluronic acid with age is impair of the structural integrity of the skin, loss of volume and plumpness, lines and wrinkles, sagginess, textural irregularities. The skin looks dull and dry. So I know there are tons of formulation for hyaluronic acid. In fact, before I got involved and excited to talk on the behalf of this new product, I was the face for HA intensifier by by Skin Surico, and I learned so much about hyaluronic acid. I did my research when it was first discovered. It was discovered because the slight cow eyes and this vitreous glass-like tissue just pour out of the, and then because it looks like glass, and hyalos in Greek, it means glass. So hyaluronic acid is almost saying that it's a glass-like tissue. I learned so much about trivias and everything else that has to do with hyaluronic acid and comparing to other formulations. And this is a perfect slide that shows the limitations of topical HA. First, we have permeation challenges. Higher molecular weight are unable to penetrate the skin to deeper layers of the skin. So it sits right on top of the skin and it will not penetrate. In fact, they also recommend that if you are in areas like if there's humidity and you just put this topical hyaluronic acid that does not penetrate the skin, you have to put something emollient underneath, because if you don't do that, what you end up happening is that you actually dry the skin, because usually by osmosis you go from areas of less concentration to more concentration. So having this large molecular weight that does not penetrate the skin, instead of hydrate the skin, it pulls water from the skin. So in order to work, you have to follow it with a very emollient cream moisturizer. You also rapid degradation. We know that the short half-life in skin is about 12 hours due to the degradation of endogenous hyaluronidase. And then these changed hyaluronic acids are susceptible to chain scissions by UV rays and free radicals. So it cuts them down. And the problem to cut these large molecular weights, that if they did penetrate, some formulations do penetrate the skin. I can say that because HA intensifier did penetrate the skin. But susceptibility to chain scission by UV or free radicals, what can do is cut the chains into smaller pieces of molecular weight hyaluronic acid. And guess what's going to happen? We contributing to inflammation. So it backfires, because it will add to the latent inflammation that we all have, that we call inflammation. It also has limited bioactivity. Surface level results that we can see is the surface hydration. It also superficial plumping of lines and wrinkles. And then temporary results. It's limited to receptor interaction and signaling activity. So it all depends what type of change is attaching to the CD44 receptors. There's other receptors, but this is the one that we study the most when we talk about hyaluronic acid, and limited to no long-term facial structural benefits. So there's a lot of limitations with other topical formulations. They sound great. They compare it to hydration and volume, but like I mentioned before, hyaluronic acid is not one molecule. It's a family of molecules with a shared backbone, but they behave different. They speak different language and they do different things. So let's go to AMPRA, which is a developed regenerative fillers adapted, kind of borrowing from the philosophy of the dermal fillers. It's filler inspired. It volumizes by 32% and does something that I've never seen before. It actually provides with contour, especially on the lower face and the mid face area. And what is this new technology that makes it so unique compared to anything else on the market? Well, it's this molecule. I mean, I don't know, it has gotten a Nobel Prize, but I know that it probably has gotten a lot of awards because this is genius. The highest zinc technology. It bonds alpha lipoic acid, which is a well-known study antioxidant molecule. If you guys remember what made Perricom's product, Dr. Perricom's product back in the day, famous was that his skincare line had alpha lipoic acid. When you sync this by bonding with hyaluronic acid, you create a really unique molecule. It secures the molecular stability for both. This synergy is amazing because it makes it long-lasting, efficacious, and resistant to degradation by endogenous hyaluronidase. So it becomes amphiphilic, meaning that for the first time you have an hyaluronic acid molecule to be able to interact with the lipid part of components that exist in the skin. So it reduced the recognition of hyaluronidase, so that leads to a slower degradation. And we know that alpha lipoic is a very potent antioxidant. So it really will also two ways that we can maintain this function of this molecule that resists degradation, because it will also resist the secession by free radicals and reactive oxygen species that normal endogenous hyaluronic acid can go through, or topical formulations that we see out there. Okay, this is amazing because it shows the physical chemical properties of the product. You could see here that it really degrades 4 times slower than other standard hyaluronic acid or similar molecular weight of hyaluronic acid. You could see that 58% retention when you have the higher zinc when compared to standard hyaluronic acid. That makes it viable because the longer it lasts, the better optimizes the extracellular matrix. The better we optimize the extracellular matrix, the better is the behavior of the fibroblast. The better the behavior of the fibroblast, the better the production of collagen-elastic fiber we're going to see. So we also see the high antioxidant potential when you see it with alpha lipoic acid alone or standard hyaluronic acid alone. The highest zinc is superior on this antioxidant potential. Okay, so this shows you what I was talking earlier, multi-layer biomarker activation. And this is all dependent on who is speaking to the receptor. A very large molecular weight hyaluronic acid, or a very small or medium. Each of them will speak differently, a different language to the receptors of our cells. And you could see when you compare this zinc molecule in AMPRA with the standard, you see that you get all these biomarkers activation that they all are extremely important for skin integrity. For example, sphingomyelinase is maintain the sphingolipids homeostasis, contribute to the skin barrier. In fact, for every single thing that you see that it goes wrong, like genodermatosis or any problem genetic on the production of this product, like the integrity of the skin may be compromised. Could be blistering, could be dryness, but it would be something that affects the overall health of the skin. You could see here transglutaminase 1 that helps form the coniform cell envelope is upregulated. Syndecan 1, which this is a cell surface protogland that tends to interact with hyaluronic acid mediated by CD44. And then you get the ITGB4, which is integral for skin integrity anchoring of the epidermis to the dermis. If this have a problem, right, genetically, or anything goes wrong in this area, it will have a problem with the anchoring of the epidermis to the dermis. And then you could see that the only thing that standard HA can do is because it's an HA. An HA is an HA. I will interact with the receptor. And the main receptor that has functionality or talks to hyaluronic acid, different versions of hyaluronic acid is CD44. This is a cell surface receptor for HA that is ubiquitous, meaning that every cell in the human body has this receptor and it will interact with hyaluronic acid metabolism of the extracellular matrix anchoring to the cell surface. Now, how does it really work? So when you get a small molecule, large molecule, and attaches to the CD44, the internal part of the domain of the CD44 receptor gets activated. It's kind of like breaks off. And then this is the beginning when it goes to the nucleus to sending whatever is the message that is going to create. And this is how we can probably have the cell to create more collagen or create more elastin fiber or make all the families of the glycoproteins that exist in the extracellular matrix, like heparin sulfate. So the Ampere technology is superior hydration and barrier integrity because it does a lot more than just standard HAs. It really creates a better environment for our cells to thrive. And this thing can be measured. And it can be measured by the upregulation of different markers. As you can see here, there's about 7 markers that get upregulated for skin hydration. As you could see this on the left side for hydration. And there's a lot more double, I think maybe 14 or 12 for barrier integrity. So you could see that compared to standard high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, this new molecule is 141% hydration. That's a lot. And then for the barrier integrity, you could see that compared to the standard, 79%. So it really, whatever we see clinically, we can tell you that is happening at the gene level by testing for these markers that get upregulated when something amazing is happening or when something not so great happens. But in this case, we are looking for the things that really makes a visible clinical effect on the skin that we can not only measure with the naked eye, but we can also measure it with gene markers. So it is a supercharged formula. It just not only contains this new version of hyaluronic acid, the highest zinc, but it has things like hydrolyzed sodium hyaluronate that also adds to the HA support. It has palmitoyl tripeptide 30A, which we know that this peptide is great for the support of collagen and elastic fiber for younger looking skin. It just gives elasticity. You have jojoba esters, again, provides hydration. Niacinamide reduce inflammation, strengthen the skin moisture barrier, and squalene, which is a lipid that forms a protective layer on the skin to help lock moisture. So it's supercharged with really good things. All of them, every one of these listed here, if you look them up, you can use open evidence, you could see that every single one of them has a positive impact on overall skin health. So let's look at studies. Studies, they're all done the same, whether it's an injectable filler or a topical skin care product, and usually about 12 weeks. And this one happens to be a single center open label clinical evaluation. And again, like anything else, is it safe and is it efficacious? It was performed a study in female subjects with visible sign of aging and structural volume loss by Dr. Diana Dreylos, MD. Let's take a look at the clinical study design. Pretty much they all are done the same. You have a washout period, right? The patient is only allowed to use cleanser, moisturizer, and sunscreen. Then on day 0, they start the AMPRA usage. And then they get evaluated 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then 12 weeks is the final evaluation. The demographic were females 45 to 66-year-old. They've got their skin 1 to 6 normal oily combination, and they did because you have to do this when you have a skincare product. You have to have in the demographic people that are self-professed sensitive skin, right? And they have to have mild to moderate presentation of fine lines, wrinkles, lack of plumpness and elasticity, visible loss of fitness and contour, dull skin, and uneven texture. The inclusion criteria is mild to moderate fine lines, using the 3 to 6 on the 10-point scale. Mild to moderate loss of plumpness, elasticity, also uneven texture skin, and self-perceived sensitive skin. About 50% of the subjects here were patients that have sensitivity or sensitive skin, so that's incredible. Okay, so exclusion criteria, 2 weeks washout, over-the-counter acne products. Also, they couldn't be in any product that contain things like vitamin C, hydroquinone, alpha hydroxide, or tretinoin acid. Prescription strength hydroquinone, vitamin A was a no-no. And if they were on oral isotretinoin, they had to be in a 6-month washout period. And again, 12-month washout, they couldn't have any plastic surgery, energy devices, or cosmetic treatments. Okay. I love my mouth ability. There it is. Came back. Let's take a look at the clinical results. So this is interesting for me when I saw this data. I've never seen data when there was more African American patient on the study than Caucasian. And this makes the study very unique, at least for me, that I peer review a lot of papers, and especially skincare. I've never seen demographics like this, but you could see that there was a good representation of patients. The minimum was Asian, most likely could be the area where the study was done, but definitely a good representation of all ethnicity that were there, of representation of 5 pattern skin types, and skin types, very dry combination, dry. And like I mentioned before, the verdict is 50% of the patients in the study, they were sensitive skin patients. So this is some of the information that we gathered on the study. There was a clinical improvement in visible effects of hyaluronic acid in skin. Basically, if you look at week 2, 4, 8, and 12, you could see this increasing improvement on plumpness, sagginess, lifting, and lower face contour, meaning that the more they use the product, the better result they got over time, which is to be expected. But one thing that I was told that during the study, most patients claim that they saw visible results right at the first evaluation at 2 weeks. So it tends to work pretty fast. Okay. There it is. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the changes. So it's a little bit blurry on my screen, but hopefully it gets better. But you could see the baseline at 12 weeks. And If you look at the contour on the lower face, it improves. If you look at the light reflection of the cheeks, it also as something that change value and improve the contour. It is measurable. You could also see when the patient put the chin on the area for the VCI. If it is a VCI, it looks like I have a VCI. So on the cheek area, the apparatus to take the photo, you could see that there is the skin looks more plump, and it doesn't get defected with the pressure, right? As you could see in the baseline. The other thing is, oh, you could see it now here. You could see like the texture of the skin on baseline. If you look at the change in texture photo, now you could see the pores is almost no apparent, and there's better light reflection, and you could see the better light reflection on the cheeks. Why do we see better light reflection? Well, when you have a production of endogenous collagen, the molecular size and weight of the collagen, sometimes the visible light spectrum, within the visible light spectrum, they have wavelengths that have equal or close to molecular size and weight as the collagen on the skin. So when you have things that have similar size and weight and they collide with each other, it's scattered. So what you're seeing here is scattering of light by the visible light spectrum or the light of the camera hitting, going through the skin and really bouncing back. Like when you play pool, right? You have the white pool, the colorful pool. When you hit the white ball, it hits all the way, everything's scattered. It's the same thing. So by scattering of light, you can actually also improve how the patient's skin is perceived. That nice glow that signals youth. Okay, so looking for my mouse again, you guys. Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at signs of aging and skin quality. So you could see from fine lines, wrinkle, elasticity, and firmness. These are signs of aging. You can see a upscale improvement on all these parameters. At 12 weeks, you could see that the firmness was 31%, elasticity 23% at 12 weeks, and then 13% of wrinkles reduction and fine lines 20%. When we go to skin quality, you could see that when you look at the texture, by 12 weeks, 44% visual tactile, that's touching it. Visually, the way it was perceived, 40%. The numbers were higher, radiance 39%, and overall skin quality at 12 weeks was 30%. Significant. These are significant numbers when you do these type of studies. Okay, mouse. Okay, and this is important. The study is important, but what the patient thinks is also very important for us. So you can see here the patient satisfaction was there. At 4 weeks, patients reported that the skin looked plumper, 94%. That's excellent. Skin looks more radiant, 95%. That's also wonderful. The skin feels smoother, 98%, close to 100%. That's absolutely amazing just by being with the product just for 4 weeks. When you look at 12 weeks, the patients I've never seen a study again when everyone reported 100%. So this is statistically significant for me from the view of the patient, because I've never seen a study where all the patients at 12 weeks agree that the skin was more toned and firmer and the texture improved and the facial contour looked more defined. That's incredible. So this is something where you can really see how the story goes. Again, this is not a filler, but sometimes when you do injectable fillers, at least I'm just talking about on the area of the cheeks, it definitely looks like what it looks to be when I do injectable fillers in this area deep on the bone to contour. It definitely resembles that. It has better light reflection. It is plump. The lower face is also improved. Again, and I think the way I rationalize this is that when we have on the on this patient, we have a cheekbone right there. And when you're creating this increase in volume on top of the cheekbone, you actually can take advantage of being pushing on something that is hard and getting more levitation or elevation capacity, like because you are increasing volume on top of something hard. It's like if my chair where I'm sitting right now is very soft and made out of marshmallow, I will not be able to do this, lift myself up. But you can do that is the base is strong and hard. And in the bottom, you could see that in that particular area, and there's lack of support of the bone, and that's why she is sagging. We have her age, and this woman tend to lose 30% of the bone on the lower face, but you still see a good improvement on the plumpiness of the skin, and that helps the contour. Same thing, different patient. You look at the area, and you have to agree, for those of you that do injectable fillers, that this is what I get when I use something like a high G prime product, and I put a super periosio, the tacking technique, and put it all through to the cheekbone. This is the look that I get when the patient comes for their follow-up on the cheekbone. And look at the luminosity of the skin, and look at the pores. This is skin that is signaling I'm healthy, I'm functional, and because of that, all the fibroblast are really happy. And then you could see an improvement on the contour of the lower face as well. If you look at the marionette line, when she squeezes on the apparatus, is resisting deformity. That to me means that it is plump. Amazing for a skincare product, right? This is not a filler. And then you could see the other side, and I think this side, you can really appreciate the contour on the lower face better than the other side. And it's the same thing, I clench, so I have a lot of bone loss here from bruxism. I do sculpture and radius to try to make it look like this side, my normal side. So one side may be different than the other one, but this product definitely works, and it works fast. Oh, I think I went finger happy here. I jumped around. Let me see if I can go back. Let's take a look at the histology. Okay, so improvement in filaggrin expression. Filaggrin is so important for the skin. It's a key biomarker with skin barrier maturation and integrity. Without this, there will not be maturation on the skin, and we will have problems with this large organ that does so much for us, right? The skin does so much for us, from thermoregulation, for hormone creation, from um, first line of defense against pathogens, and the list goes on and on. So it is so important that the integrity of the skin is there, and without filaggrin, we could not have that. And you could see with this product at baseline at 12 weeks, there is enhanced filaggrin expression in the epidermis, 69% plus. I'm trying to advance. Okay, there it is. It comes and goes. Okay, so look at the collagen density. I gotta go back. I'm having ghost in this place. Okay, can I go back? Okay, so we did that one. And this is the one that was CD44 expression. Okay, so CD4 expression is important. Like I mentioned before, the hyaluronic acid is a family of polymers attached to a backbone, and they can be of different size, and they will speak differently according to their size. Their size communicate things are different when they're attached to the CD44 expression on the cells. Let's talk about fibroblasts. So this fibroblast has a CD44 receptor. We have a large molecular weight hyaluronic acid that attaches to the receptor that causes a reaction. with the hyaluronic acid and the receptor, right? When they're linked, then the internal domain of the CD4 changes, goes, and then goes to the nucleus and it sends a signal, and that could be whatever it is that it was told to that fibroblast to do. Okay, so it is very important. So what happens after 12 weeks of using this product? You could see that in the skin biopsy, the CD4 for the CD44 expression was upregulated by 26%. This is important because, again, I mentioned earlier, and I give you the analogy of the old fibroblast in a young, healthy, amazing extracellular matrix. Our cells get old because they lose the signaling, and the signaling, the molecule in charge of signaling, is endogenous hyaluronic acid. But again, no one molecule, no one thing. Endogenous hyaluronic acid is many things, but it does many things as well, depending on their size. Okay, I'm trying to. Okay, so look at the improvement in collagen density enhanced in the dermis after 12 weeks by looking at the blue stain, 31% after 12 weeks of using the product. And you can see that if we have an improved extracellular matrix with good amount of endogenous hyaluronic acid, then you have a better performance of the behavior of the fibroblast. If you don't have a good environment, then the behavior of the fibroblast is going to be different. And again, if we have other hyaluronic acid that is degrading in the dermis, if you think about it, if you turning into small molecular weight hyaluronic acid, we actually add into inflammation, and so we contribute to inflammation. So all this is important to keep in mind to when we use different formulations of hyaluronic acid. And you can see here the safety and tolerability data. We could see that you're just gonna go right to the bottom where it says zero adverse events. None of the patients in the study had an adverse event. And it really helped on things like burning, stinging, tingling, itching. You didn't see any of that, right? At 12 weeks, the subjects reported that none of this happened to them. So zero, nil, nada, none of this. So what it tells you that even the most sensitive skin can tolerate this product. So using a bioinstrumentation to check the hydration and the transepidermal water loss is very important when you're using a skincare, and you could see the data right here. You can see that if you look at skin hydration at 24 hours, still the skin, by using the instrumentation to measure the water content or the hydration of the skin at 24 hours, it still retain 30%. So it's long lasting. Look at 8 hours after using, you still have 40% of the retention of the hydration provided by the product. And look at 48 hours, you still have 10%. But again, this is a product, at least the way I use it twice a day. So none of these things happening to me. I am hydrated 24/7. I'm plump. And you can see the transepidermal water loss when you compare the patients, the untreated arm versus the treated. You can see that there was a significant transepidermal water loss on the patients that were untreated versus the patients that were treated. So in summary, the HyaSync is a new technology, a new way to optimize the extracellular matrix with this bond between alpha lipoic acid and hyaluronic acid. Hyoscine conjugates addresses two common challenges with other topical hyaluronic acid. The way it's delivered through the dermis, and also the durability compared to non-conjugated hyaluronic acid. It shows that compared to a lot of products out there that have hyaluronic acid, it have the study behind that shows upregulation of key biomarkers that make it essential for anybody that is bringing a product into their clinic for the patients to use in order to show results that is backed by science. And the historical results speak for themselves. It did show an enormous amount of increase in collagen density, and also we saw filaggrin for overall skin health and clinical visible improvement in plumpness, lifting, and contour. So it is a product that I feel like anybody that is doing any injectable fillers, this will complement and perhaps add to the results. And also, again, if you hear me talk for the last 3 years, I've been changing my voice or what I'm trying to achieve on the aesthetic industry. I would like not only skincare, but injectable fillers and energy devices. I would like everyone to do cell-centric approach to treatments. We need to understand that a lot of things that we do, and we currently do it, we need to change the consciousness of how we're doing it, because we are very demanding. We want the collagen, we want the elastic fiber, we want, but we do it without thinking about the overall health of the cells and also the environment where they reside. And that is adding to inflammation and production and accumulation of senescent cells. So I feel like this product can optimize the extracellular matrix in a way that may be able to have a better environment for cells to thrive and prevent early senescence. But this is just something that I have in my mind. But by just knowing what I know, what I have studied, my research on senescent cells, I think I'm on the right track. So I think that was my last sign. So thank you so much, you guys. And I'm open for any question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bay. That was very insightful. We do have a couple of questions. What is the key aspect of AMPRA that differentiates it from other topical HA products?
Well, so, as you saw here, I mean, there's tons of HA products, and some of them before this product, that, for example, HA Intensifier was an amazing product. The formulation, it was incredible, but this is a synchronization between two great molecules that allows the molecule to not be able to be degraded by reactive oxygen species or UV rays that give the same thing as hyaluronic acid, but the link makes it amphiphilic. So it can interact better with other molecules in the dermis, epidermis. It will give the hydration that is needed. It affects the behavior of fibroblasts. And as you could see, all this upregulation of markers is doing something that other HA fillers can. But the number one thing that would be just for anybody to see is that a lot of the hyaluronic acid formulations, they claim hydration, but they just sit on top of the skin. They don't even penetrate. And the better ones, they do, but you could see that they're subject to secession, breakdown by UV rays or reactive oxygen species. And when they break down like that, they will break down into the smaller components of hyaluronic acid. And this type of hyaluronic acid add to inflammation. And perhaps I'm thinking that, the reason we have that latent inflammation, all of us, it can be just by the endogenous activity of hyaluronidase breaking down the endogenous hyaluronic acid, and that's why we can get away from it. But if you add exogenous hyaluronic acid, that is also going to break into smaller particles, well, then we're adding more to this conversation. So I think that is the more obvious thing. It's completely different.
Another question, are the markers of bioactivation an indication that EMPRA may have a broader benefit in the ECM?
Exactly. I mean, each one of those markers that were upregulated, they have a significant function for overall skin health. They do different things, maybe keeping the corneocytes pattern, maybe creating lipids, maintaining the integrity of the structure of the extracellular matrix, increasing the content of hyaluronic acid, increasing the content of elastic fibers, maybe doing angiogenesis. I mean, they're all doing something different. So when you see them upregulated and you look at what is the task of that gene and the molecule that it will create, it is actually an amazing, unique way, scientific way to prove what we see clinically, that it is really happening.
Thank you. And how would you explain the benefits of Emperor to a patient?
Well, the same way like I've been, trying to talk, I tell my patients that the environment where our cells resides are as important as the cells themselves. And I always give in the analogy, I like to use the analogy of the old cell in an extracellular matrix, the environment that I try to humanize cells, like all cells are an extension of us. They need nutrition, protection, and hydration. And the hydration in the skin comes from hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid is more than hydration, it's a signal molecule. So if that is compromised, which it happens with the passing of time, the signal is compromised. And if the signal is compromised, our fibroblasts don't know what to do. And if they're not getting stimulated enough, they just have no other thing that just secrete collagenase and gelatinase, and then they turn into a senescent cells. And then they can tell other cells to turn into senescent. So everything just becomes worse and worse and worse. If we improve the environment and we improve the signaling, then we have fibroblasts that are happy to be in that environment. They respond better to the signaling because they're getting better signaling, and perhaps they will stay longer for us and not decide to go into a rest state and turn into zombie cells, or worse, just die off through apoptosis. So the environment is important. It's important for us. If we live in a terrible environment, we will not thrive. And that's the way I explain it to the patients. I humanize the cells. I mean, after all, they are living entities, conscious entities that are birth, mature, go to work. They either die or they go into an arrest state. So, but they need nutrition, protection, hydration, and a healthy environment to survive.
In a hot, humid environment, is it necessary to add an extra emollients when using this specific product? You mentioned some HAs
Yes,
actually pull water out. Is
you
Emperor
do.
different in this category?
Well, I think if you look at Ampra, one of the ingredients you always say was upchar. It had, that have a few ingredients that esqualene is one of them that prevents transepidermal water loss. So that you don't need with this product. This product actually is everything you need in one bottle. So it provides everything, but it also the squalene and other ingredients that will prevent transepidermal water loss. So me, I will only use I do use a moisturizer after because I just layer everything. I mean, it takes me an hour to go to bed. But yeah, I do use a moisturizer. But if you have oily skin or combination skin, you may not need to do that. If you have severe dehydrated skin, then you may need to do that. But the product itself will protect itself from getting that problem, that going from less water to more water when you have a topical hyaluronic acid that just sits on the skin, and then you're in a humid environment, you actually dry yourself more. So for that, if you were using any other formulation of hyaluronic acid, you have to have a layer of emollient for that not to happen. Like create a sandwich between the skin and the emollient.
With the increased demand for skin tightening, injectables, laser, etc., do you think Emperor could become an important adjunct to these treatments, specifically prior to the treatment by supporting skin's response?
Yes, and and for everything. And this is what I've been lecturing about senescent cells. It took me a year to make this lecture, but this is the way I see it when it comes to inflammation and senescent cells. Everything that we're doing right now, I mean, if I'm a 20-year-old person guy and you do a laser to me, or even retina, or you do Sculptra or hyperradius, my cells will work and they'll recover. But I'm gonna be 58 this year, so my cells are 58 years old, and you constantly forcing them to perform without the proper environment, without the hydration that they need, or the nutrition and everything else to make them thrive, they will crash and burn and turn into senescent cells. So there's different ways to prevent this. Either you use xenomorphics to rescue them, you give them the nutrition that they need to have more vitality from the insult, or you create a perfect environment for them to thrive. So I think this product will create the perfect environment for the cells to thrive. So it definitely, I think, is amazing because not too many products out there can optimize the extracellular matrix. I mean, before Amper, I have techniques where I can optimize the extracellular matrix, like with polynucleotides, but that is only when they're here. What happens to the other 300 plus day of the year when they're at home? So they only get the benefit on one day out of the year, or maybe 3 or 4 days if they come throughout the year. But we need something for 24/7 signaling of optimization of the extracellular matrix. So this is an amazing product for that.
Is Emperor non-comedogenic, and would you layer Alto first, then Emperor?
It is non-comedogenic for sure. I mean, I think like when it comes to skincare, medical grade, we make sure that we are very conscientious about not bringing anything that is comedogenic, and skin better, they do their homework and make sure that no ingredient will cause this problem. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
The second part, I lost the question. If it was non-comedogenic, and let me go get the question again. Sorry about this.
No worries.
Would you layer Alto first, then Emperor?
Yeah, you can do that. I like to put my antioxidant first and then put the amber for second.
Wonderful. Another question we have here. What is the best laser procedure that you recommend for women between 45 55 years old to combine with application of topical hyaluronic acid to give a healthy and lifting effect?
So I mean, it all depends. It depends. There's so many different energy devices out there. Could be a fractional T02 Herbio if you look like something about Mary, very wrinkled and thing. Or me, I like right now one technology is like the Tribet from Cyton. You could do a Fraxel. Any of the, it all depends. You have to look at the patient's lifestyle also. I mean, I live in Fort Lauderdale. Everybody has a boat or a friend that has a boat. So it is so hard for me to get people to do lasers here because nobody wants to miss the party during the summer. So it all depends, but you have to always keep in mind if you are 40 something, 50 something, 60 something, you have to make sure to understand that when you do these laser treatments, if you don't have the proper environment for those cells, you're forcing them to perform, they're gonna crash and burn. So what I see over the years, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, I'm in an affluent area. I have patients that their job here is to look beautiful for their husband. So spend a lot of money here. And I do all the treatments. And I was very frustrated after a certain point that they will do the treatment, they'll spend the money on all these expensive creams. And I felt like I was failing them because I could see the aging on the skin. And that's what brought me to look more into really, let's go back at a zero level because beauty and aging start at a cellular level. So that's when I started to get all this literature and understand cellular behavior, understand the importance of the environment. So if you're gonna be doing all these things and you know a spring chicken, you better using the right products and doing the right treatments and taking supplements, because you are causing more inflammation and you forcing yourself to perform. They crash and burn, they turn into zombie cells, and when you have more zombie cells, the functional active cells, nothing will work. And I want things to work when I'm 70. And I was seeing that on myself, on my neck. Nothing was working. I have access to everything. And they understood why. And then I changed the way I did treatments for myself and my patients. I'm a self-centric treatments. I will, before I do the treatment, I will think about the age of the patient and what I'm doing to them. I'm not a slave driver for collagen elastic fiber anymore. I do it with a different consciousness. So this product is great to change and optimize the environment for the extracellular matrix.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Dr. Bay, for this very insightful presentation. The key word is self-centric treatment.
Correct.
That's correct. And also, thank you so much to our supporters, Can Better Science, for making this educational event possible. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Good night, everybody.
Good night.